Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Wednesday, January 15th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. President-elect Trump is just days away from stepping back into the White House. During his re-election bid, he made a lot of promises.
You are looking at economic devastation of the Central Valley with just these two policies, tariffs and mass deportations.
We will hear from an expert on the economic outlook of a second Trump presidency in just a few minutes. But first, today's headlines. Congressman David Valadao is calling for transparency from immigration officials. His statement follows Border Patrol raids last week that resulted in the detainment of dozens of Kern County residents. Valadao is a House Republican representing the Kern County area. He wrote that known criminals should be expelled, but he adds that future immigration operations should be better communicated to avoid causing alarm among farm workers. Many farm workers have been fearful of commuting to work after the raids. Valadao also called for, quote, common-sense immigration reform that establishes a pathway to citizenship for people who contribute to the economy. Meanwhile, online misinformation about Border Patrol sightings is increasing, and immigration advocates are working to dispel these rumors. KVCR's Anthony Victoria has more.
Last week, Border Patrol agents arrested dozens of undocumented people in Kern County during an enforcement operation. Yasmin Mercado with the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice says misinformation is rising online, and so are false reports.
It's important for us to, go out there and check and investigate. We'll talk to the people around. If it's houses, we'll talk to the neighbors. We'll talk to the businesses around.
Russell Jauregui is an immigration lawyer based in San Bernardino. He says President Donald Trump's mass deportation plans are triggering widespread anxiety in immigrant communities. Jauregui also says people mistake routine checkpoints or law enforcement for U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
Usually people are overreacting based on fear.
Both Jauregui and Mercado encourage people to take photos and receive the support of local organizations to verify reported incidents.
That was Anthony Victoria of our California newsroom partner, KVCR. Fresno Mayor Jerry Dyer is defending the embattled mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. Bass has faced criticism for the devastating LA County fires that have killed 24 people and destroyed thousands of homes. Dyer called Bass a remarkable leader and friend in an Instagram post this week. He also wrote that, quote, criticism isn't going to help one person rebuild and start over. Meanwhile, an online petition calling for Bass's resignation has received more than 130,000 signatures. Social media rumors are falsely claiming that a prominent agricultural company is withholding water from the Los Angeles region. This comes as firefighters are trying to get a handle on raging wildfires. News partner SJV Water reports the rumors are centered around the Wonderful Company. It's a top producer of nuts and citrus. Online rumors have overestimated how much water the company actually controls. Company representatives took to the social media platform X to deny the rumors and say that water for food does not come from the same source as water for cities.
Join KVPR for an open house Thursday, January 23rd from 5 till 7 p.m. at the station's broadcast center in Clovis. Meet the team, enjoy a studio tour, and graze on hors d'oeuvres. RSVP at kvpr.org/open house.
And now to our main story. The 2024 presidential election was decided largely on the economy. Voters, frustrated with high prices at the grocery store, wanted cheaper goods and more spending power. They also wanted the new administration to get the economy under control. Now, in a matter of days, Donald Trump will indeed return to the White House for his second and final term. So how can we expect the economy to shape up under a second Trump administration? Richard Gearhart is an associate professor of economics at Cal State Bakersfield. He recently joined me for a discussion about the economic outlook for 2025 and beyond, which he says brings a lot of uncertainty at a time when people need it most. Gearhart starts by laying out how tariffs, for example, could impact the economy.
A tariff is a way to level the global economic playing field. If one country is playing dirty, stealing intellectual property, or there's an economic term called dumping, where you sell products below cost in one country to drive out any competition you may have on the international field. But it's a topic, it's a term, it's a concept that has kind of reinvigorated itself after its heyday, and that was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So we haven't really seen strong or broad-based tariff policy in the United States for about a century. And so a tariff is essentially a sales tax. It's a sales tax on domestic consumers because importers, those people who bring in the goods to sell into the United States, aren't going to lose money. The large retailers, the Target, the Walmart, Best Buy, those big box retailers that rely on bringing in imported goods at low costs and selling them to Americans, they're going to pass through the prices. So every time we hear the word tariff, just think of it as a sales tax. So a 10% tariff on Chinese goods would be 10% sales tax.
So has Trump come out with any specifics of his tariff proposals that you know of and how that might influence our economy here in the U.S.?
Sure. So Trump has suggested a broad 10% tariff on pretty much everything coming into the United States, with maybe an additional 60% tariff on everything coming in from China. So we know that the biggest impact of these tariffs is going to be inflation, the degradation of purchasing power in America. Yale, their budget office, highlighted a study about the economic impacts of tariffs on American purchasing power. And what they found was, in the best case scenario, Americans would lose about $2,000 worth of their income to higher prices from tariffs. Now, for the median household family who's earning $80,000, that's probably not disastrous. It's bad, but it can be absorbed. For your lowest income families, those individuals in poverty, which tend to populate the Central Valley of California much more broadly, that's about 10% of their income. And that is not absorbable. And that is on goods, the paper towels, the shoes, the t-shirts, the home goods. Those are on goods that low-income individuals disproportionately face. So you are seeing essentially the resurgence of inflation along with reduced purchasing power for a lot of residents in the United States.
A lot to keep an eye on in even just the next couple of months. Let's pivot to immigration. Immigration policy is another thing I know you'll be watching, and Trump has threatened to implement mass deportations of undocumented people. Will Trump's immigration policy proposals potentially have an impact here in the Central Valley and our economy here?
Absolutely. So if you look at, let's just say, Kern County, there are about 170,000 immigrants in Kern County, a population of slightly under 1 million individuals. About 90 to 100,000 are undocumented immigrants. So you're talking about removing 1 in 10 individuals, and these are mostly adults who are working. So you're talking about removing 1 in 10 working adults from the Kern County economy. And they tend to work in industries that are vital to the Central Valley: agriculture, construction, mining, restaurants, and leisure and hospitality. And there is this concern that if we eliminate a lot of the workforce, where about 25% of construction workers are undocumented workers and closer to 50% of agriculture and farm workers are undocumented workers, there is concern that you're just going to hollow out the entirety of the Central Valley with no workers. There's no domestic workers to replace undocumented workers who are mass deported.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, there's one other major thing that I am looking for, and that is retaliatory tariffs. And retaliatory tariffs are when one country levies tariffs against one group, another country responds by levying tariffs. So in response to the 2018 tariffs by President Trump, continued by President Biden, China retaliated with tariffs against a lot of agricultural products in the United States, especially tree nuts, which we know are prevalent cash crops here in the Central Valley. And what happened was you saw farmers fallowing a lot of fields and taking almond and pistachio trees out of circulation. And you saw some of the largest welfare payments going to farmers in U.S. history, where we were spending close to $15 billion a year in subsidy payments to farmers hit by these retaliatory tariffs. In the Central Valley, about 1 in 10 of our dollars, our GDP dollars, is from agriculture. In Fresno County, they produce about $11 billion worth of agricultural products. In Kern County, it's about $10 to $11 billion in agricultural products. You are looking at economic devastation of the Central Valley with just these two policies, tariffs and mass deportations. And that would be absolutely devastating to large swaths of our communities that did vote for President Trump.
We've been speaking with Richard Gearhart. He's an economics professor at CSU Bakersfield. Richard, thanks for joining us to talk about the economy.
Thank you for having me. I hope you have a great day.
And that does it for today's show. If you have a story idea or feedback for Central Valley Daily, we would love to hear from you. Just email podcast@kvpr.org. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
We could all use a little help navigating the news these days. The Consider This podcast wants to give you a hand. 6 days a week, we'll help you make sense of the day's biggest news story and what it means for you in less than 15 minutes. Listen now to the Consider This podcast from NPR.